Welcome into Pac-12 Preview here, Week 4 in the Pac-12. Yes, I am Michael Caratinito. That is my Twitter handle at Diablos00 as, Sun Devil alum, hence the Pac-12 show. But that being said, man, what a crazy and fun Week 3 it was in the Pac-12 and leading to Week 4. There's one. Let's get to the standings first. As they appear after last week in conference play. And for the Pac, yes, up top is still the Trojans of Southern California. USC is 4-0 in conference play, 6-0 overall. The Bruins remain perfect in conference play at 3-0 overall and 6-0, or 3-0 in conference play, 6-0 overall. The Ducks, they are 3-0 in conference play and 5-1 overall. The Utes, 2-1 in conference play as they dropped their first game, and that was to UCLA. 2-1 overall, 4-2, or 2-1 in conference play, 4-2 overall. Cal is 1-1 in conference play, 3-2 overall. Arizona State, Oregon State, Washington, and Washington State and Arizona are all 1-2 in conference play. ASU is 2-4 overall. Oregon State 4-2. The Huskies are 4-2 overall as well, as is Washington State, and Arizona is 3-3 in conference play. Both Colorado and Stanford, the OFR in conference play. Colorado 0-2, Stanford 0-4, and they are 1-4 overall. Colorado still looking for, well, not only just their first conference win, but first win of the season for the Buffaloes. And just to recap last week's scores real quick in the Pac-12 for you fans that unfortunately may have missed out, but that's all right. That's why you're here. That's why I got you covered. USC pulled away from Washington State, the 6th-ranked Trojans, 30-14 over the Cougars. UCLA, again, that big win over Utah, 42-32. Oregon beat Arizona, 49-22. ASU with their first conference win and upsetting 21st-ranked Washington, which, man, Washington coming to Tempe hasn't been good for them whatsoever at all. But the Sun Devils get the 45-38 shootout victory over the Huskies, and they get their, like I said, first conference win. Does ASU move up to 2-4? And Stanford had a double-digit lead over Oregon State, but the Beavers, Justin Smith leading his crew, coming back to win 28-27. And man, like I said, it was an insane week as we look at just to read the top 25 rankings. Obviously, Washington fell out of the top 25 with that road loss to Arizona State. But as we look at the rankings heading into the weekend, the AP top 25, the Pac-12 has USC, who won, but yes, as I said, dropped one spot to number 7. Yeah, I know. Really awesome. But USC's at number 7. UCLA, with that win over Utah, they jumped up 7 spots from 18 to 11. And that's where the Trojans are at 11. Oregon won, but they stayed put at 12 somehow. So they're at 12. And then Utah, with that loss to UCLA, dropped 9 spots. So they are at 20. So we have 7, 11, 12, and 20 are your lucky numbers, are your featured numbers of the week this week on Sesame Street. I know some of you will get that. But anyway, in the coaches poll, though, USC did stay at 6, even though I call it the SIDs poll. Oregon and UCLA swapped. So Oregon's at 11, UCLA's at 12 in the coaches poll. And then Utah actually went down to number 19. So one spot above where they are in the AP poll. So that's what they look like in the coaches poll, to say the least. But yeah, the schedule for this week in the Pac-12, the preview of the games we are going to get to. And yes, there is another big matchup of ranked teams. And that features USC going, number 7, USC going on the road to number 20, Utah. And that is at, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. here on the left coast on Fox. So a primetime game for the Trojans going to Rice-Eccles Stadium, where we know those fans are going to be very ornery, especially after, again, that tough road loss to UCLA last week. So USC travels to Utah. We have Washington State traveling not too far, but taking on Oregon State, battle up there in the Pacific Northwest. Arizona will be up at Washington. Can the Huskies get swept by the Arizona schools? Do they return home and return to Michael Penix Jr. is having a phenomenal season, but we'll get to that in a minute. Cal is going to Boulder to take on Colorado. Talking about consistency for Cal. Well, Colorado's been down. Can Cal get that tough win on the road at Boulder? We'll look at that. And Stanford finishing up, again, they have an age-old rivalry, but finishing up their non-conference play, like I keep telling you, they have their game against Notre Dame, and it's in South Bend. That'll be 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on NBC. And, like I said, the USC Utah game is on Fox. And then Cal and Colorado is on the Pac-12 network at 2 o'clock Eastern time, 11 a.m. here on the left coast. Arizona at Washington, that's 5:30 Eastern time, 2:30 Pacific, which is on the Pac-12 network. And then, like I said, Notre Dame and Stanford and Notre Dame are on NBC. And then USC Utah on Fox. And then wrapping up the night on the Pac-12 network, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. up in the Pacific Northwest as Washington State goes to Oregon State. So that is where we are at matchup-wise, standing-wise, everything. So, yeah, a little annoyed, I will say this real quick before we get into the previews about the Pac-12. Well, about the rankings, again, and they've done it at the top because earlier in the season when Alabama was number 1, they played at Texas. Texas was unranked. They balled out. Alabama won the game, barely, but still, they won. And they jumped Georgia above them. And I'm so sick of this having to win by a lot of points. A win is a win. If I'm a coach and I have a team beat, I'm not gonna put up another 14 points in the last 2 minutes of the game. It's ridiculous. If you win, you win. If you're the ranked team, doesn't mean every game should be easy. And this has always been the problem with the rankings and people wanting to get predictions right. And yeah, we all want to get preseason predictions right. And I'm not saying that's every single person does the rankings, but yeah, Alabama was the top ranked team and yet they lost. So for me, very annoying to say the least, but nonetheless, that's where we are rankings wise. So, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Utah. Obviously, Washington with that loss to ASU, like I said, fell out. Teams that have a chance to get in, Oregon State and Washington State, that is a big, big matchup in the Pacific Northwest. And could the winner of that, yes, depends on what happens above, but get into the top 25, because I did forget to mention receiving votes. Washington State did receive 10 votes, and they were the only other Pac-12 team in the AP that received votes. So that game for Washington State is going to be big at Oregon State, who again looking to improve on their record. And let's start with that game in the Pacific Northwest. So let's definitely start with that game because when you look at, like I said, the standings in the Pac-12 for Oregon State and Washington State. Oregon State 1-2 in conference play, as is Washington State, and they are both 4-2 overall. So getting to 500 in conference, obviously, to overstate that, the obvious, huge for both teams, and the winner would go up to 5-2 as well. And this year, again, it's not the winner of the South taking on the winner of the North. It is the top two teams in the Pac-12 that will play in the Pac-12 championship game. And yes, some obviously quite a bit of football to be played out. But right now, that would be USC and UCLA. But they also play each other towards the end of the season, second to last game, because USC and Notre Dame play at Southern Cal this year. So that is the last game of the season for the Trojans. But we'll get to that when it happens. So Washington State and Oregon State. And when we look at last week for Oregon State, or for Washington State, like I said, who fell to USC 30-14. It was, again, an interesting game because it was 17-14 at the half, and that's actually the only quarter for Washington State. So you need a little more offensive consistency there. But that's the only quarter Washington State scored in. USC scored in every quarter. But, yeah, like I said, it was 17-14 in favor of the Trojans at the half. Washington State fell 30-14. And, Cameron Ward, not a bad day, 19 for 32, 172 yards, threw for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They did rush for 144 yards. Jalen Jenkins talked about on Monday, 13 carries for 130 yards, averaging a first down a carry. So USC, bending, not really breaking, but not a bad game plan. Well, not a bad game plan, but having a very a balanced offense. And defensively, they did have 1 sack, 5 tackles for losses against SC. Caleb Williams only threw the ball 29 times. He was 15 for 29. He was 15 for 29 for 188 yards. He also did throw 2 touchdowns, but the Trojans, and they rushed for 181 yards. So, again, defensively, not bad. Travis Dye, though, had a game. I talked about Jalen Jenkins, 13 carries for 130 yards. And we'll talk about what Travis Dye did when we preview their game against Utah. But, again, Washington State, the way they match up, again, to me, it's one of those things where they are on the road. And when you look at it, for the Cougars getting off to a fast start, but being consistent, like I said, only scoring in the second quarter against USC is tough. And when we look at Washington State offensively in the conference, Cameron Ward, their quarterback, is third in yards. He's thrown for 1,617 yards. Rushing wise, let's see where Jenkins is at. Or Nikita Watson, for Washington State. Nikita Watson is a 12th ranked rusher in the conference, 64 carries on the season, 325 yards, averaging 5.1 a carry, 2 touchdowns for Nikita Watson. Jalen Jenkins, though, is at 15. He's got 37 carries for 257 yards, averaging 6.9 a carry, and the 1 touchdown run for him. So, but yeah, with what Cameron Ward is doing, passing, like I said, third in the Pac-12 behind Michael Penix Jr. and Jaden DeLaura. Cameron Ward has completed 67.3% of his passes, except for 1,617 yards, 15 touchdowns. He does have the 7 interceptions, and he has been sacked, though, a league high 20 times. So they're going to need to tighten that up on the road. I know that much. Last week was a little bit better against USC. SC, well, not too much better, actually. SC had 5 sacks. So Ward, again, that offensive line needing to come together, because when he has time. I mean, we've seen what the young man can do and the offense can do, but they're defensively, they've kept everything close. And when we look at the defensive rankings, Dayan Henley, second in the Pac-12 to Kyle Soley of Arizona State, 55 total tackles. And sack-wise, Henley also, well, tied for fourth, but the top five, he's got 4 sacks. So he's right there. And then interception-wise, the highest ranked person on the Washington State defense is Christian Mejia, who has 1 interception. And he is a defensive lineman, which is even more, I guess, eye-opening in that aspect, because he does have 1 interception. So again, not getting the interceptions, but again, going through quarterbacks, obviously making the plays. But Washington State overall, when we look at them as a team, they are defensively, they're third in the Pac-12, giving up only 20.2 points a game. They are second in sacks behind the Trojans. Trojans have 24 this season, and Washington State right behind them at 19. In conference play, yards per game, though, Washington State is 6th. So they're in the middle of the conference, giving up 371.2 yards a game. So again, points-wise, not giving up a ton of points. And that's the thing. You see the yardage, and I always hear coaches say, team's number 1 in yards, but defensively they could be number 1 in yards, but say at the bottom or last in points. It's about not giving up the points. So looking at it that way, again, 371.2 yards a game puts them 6th. And like I said, points per game defensively, they are 3rd in the conference behind USC's 18.7, Utah's 19 even, and then Washington State's at 20.2. But yeah, gonna need to put the ball in the end zone and show consistency through quarters, because when we look at Oregon State, sack-wise, Oregon State, as we look at them on the other side of this coin, sack-wise, Oregon State is 10th in the conference with only 6 sacks on the season. So whether they're blitzing or not, but defensive line not really getting too much pressure or getting home, as they say. So for Oregon State, 10th in sacks out of 12 in the conference. And for yards allowed, Oregon State's 5th. So they're actually 1 spot ahead of Washington State. They're giving up 358.2 yards a game. Points per game, though, for the Beavers, they are 7th, and they are giving up 27.2 points per game, like I said, to Washington State's 20.2 a game. So looking at a closest matchup, but Oregon State, again, on that precipice, not really getting pressure and giving up to 27, a little bit over 27 points per game are the Beavers. And last week, Oregon State they, again, had that amazing comeback against Stanford. And it's crazy because Stanford was up 17-7 at half, 24-10 going into the 4th, and Stanford gets outscored 18-3. So Justin Smith, again, Ben Gulbranson in at quarterback, and that is because of injuries. Pardon me. I was looking at what Gulbranson did, and that is because of the injury that they've sustained at
he's going to take the direct snap.
quarterback.
Keeps those legs moving, and Oregon State just a point away from tying this football.
Yes, Oregon State. Pardon me, as you heard there, but and it'll be big for Gulbranson to have a as Chance Nolan, pardon me, I had it in my notes. I can't read it, but that's okay. Hey, it's always entertaining, right? Chance Nolan was 14 for 20, or Chance Nolan is banged up. Chance Nolan is banged up, and he can't go. So Gulbranson leads the comeback for Oregon State against Stanford. And, again, it'll just be, it looks like he'll be back in again this week as well. So, so for that, and it's, again, be a little tough for Oregon State, but now that he's got
First and goal coming up.
So it'll be a challenge for him. It'll definitely be a challenge for Oregon State. But yeah, like I said last week, I mean, Gulbranson, you look at his numbers, 20 for 29, extremely efficient, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. And the defense, too, like I said, they got 1 sack. Again, they are again, conference-wise in the bottom in sacks. But, what Justin Smith is doing up there, again, they're 4-2 overall, 1-2 in conference play for Oregon State. That's why I think the winner of this game, depending on what happens again in the top above them, could go into the top 25. Especially, when we get to USC, if USC wins and Washington State wins, obviously that helps. Well, again, connecting dots, but who knows the way they vote. USC could, win and drop down again. So it's maddening. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, when we look at it for Oregon State, it's one of those things where Gulbranson obviously proven he could do it. I mean, 20 for 29, like I said. And then rushing wise, Damian Martinez only had 3 carries, but 83 yards and 1 touchdown. Jam Griffin, who we've talked about, 13 touches, 75 yards, 5.8 a carry. And the only other rusher, and Deshaun Fenwick had 14 for 54. They figure they ran the ball 40 times, threw it 29 times, and they are able to come back, get the huge rally against the Cardinal, come back and win. So, and then when I say you can look at this this Oregon State offense, and in total yards so far this season, they are right behind Arizona. They're 7th in total yards per game, 430.7. So, yeah, nothing too shabby. I've had a little shift up top as because Oregon had a huge week against Arizona last week, but we'll get to that. But yeah, 430.7 yards a game, so 7th right now in the conference, which is man, I mean, you think, wow, 430, you figure that's 7th? Yes, that's insanely 7th for Oregon State. So total yards a game, they're 7th in passing. And again, they've stayed very balanced. They're 10th with 249.7 yards a game. So, but they're staying balanced. And that's what if you can stay balanced and obviously win, yes, you would not like to have to come back from, 2-score deficits, being down 2 scores the whole time, because a lot of times that's going to be, as we know, extremely challenging and almost impossible to do. But yeah, they're 10th in passing yards, 249.7 a game is Oregon State. And then when we look at their rushing yards, though, they are 5th at 181 yards a game, just a 2-yard difference behind SC. So, hey, you're going to be tops in rushing. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to obviously control the clock, and you're going to limit possessions for the other team. The thing is, yes, you need to put the ball in the end zone. You need to score, because in limiting possessions, if the other team is scoring on every single possession, even though they don't have as many, and you don't, chances are, yes, as you guys know, basic math, they win the game. But yeah, for Oregon State, I mean, I look at, again, I just look at it to be around that point range, 28 to 35, 40 points ish. I think the winner definitely could score. But man, you know what? I'm going with Washington State. I'm going with Washington State. Here's one for you. I'm going with Washington State in overtime as the Cougars. It goes to overtime, and the Cougars win it. I want to say, let's go. I said 40. Let's go 47 to it'd be 47. I'll say 47-40. The Cougars win it in overtime in Corvallis. They get that victory. So 47-40, Washington State over Oregon State on the road, battle of the Pacific Northwest. Look, we're going to step aside real quick, and when we get back, we are going to talk about, yes, the ranked matchup. Number 7, USC goes on the road to Rice-Eccles Stadium, Salt Lake City, to take on the Utes of Utah. We'll talk about that on the other side. Also, Arizona, Washington, and Stanford, Notre Dame on the docket. We'll step aside real quick, and I'll be right back with USC Utah preview here on Pac-12 Preview. All right, back here on Pac-12 Preview. Let's roll on as we have number 7 USC going on the road to Salt Lake City to take on the 20th ranked Utah Utes. And, well, it was tough, obviously, last week for Utah as they fell to UCLA in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, 42-32, to again fall down the rankings a little bit. And as for USC, like I said in the last preview, they beat Washington State 30-14. And they actually went down to number 7, but USC 6-0 in conference play, 4-0 overall. Utah, they are now 2-1 or 4-2 overall, as they had that loss to Florida week 1 at a conference, and 4-2 overall, 2-1 in conference play. And let's start with the visiting Trojans because, look at exactly what they did last week. USC offensively, fourth in yards a game, 461.8. Fourth in passing yards per game. Caleb Williams, again, transferred in from Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley's guy, and again, getting more comfortable. Again, knowing what Lincoln Riley wants to do offensively, having that comfort, but getting comfortable with the receivers and just the offense in general anyway, getting on that page. But offensively, or passing, 278.5 yards a game, and rushing, the Trojans are fourth. So top five in all three offensive categories there. Rushing, they're 183.3 yards a game. When we look at SC defensively, points allowed, SC went to number one in conference, 18.7 points per game. Just an eyelash, and we'll get to Utah in a second, but an eyelash ahead of Utah. They are number one. USC in yards allowed is number four. They're allowing 351.5 yards a game. And for sacks, like I said, they are number one in the conference. 24 sacks this season as the Trojans, who are 6-0. So again, in 6 games, 24 sacks, 4 sacks a game. Again, just changing field position, forcing a team to punt. Penalties obviously always do that, but to get the sacks and what this defensive line is doing. And I know I got a few tweets saying a few weeks ago, you were saying USC's defense could be had. Again, to me, compared to their offense, and yes, in the secondary, not saying their defensive line wasn't getting pressure, not saying there's not talent there. I'm just saying the defense definitely early on in the season, again, giving up some yards, and yes, adjusting to a new head coach, defensively adjusting to some new stuff and getting players in. I'm just saying in the secondary that they were showing that they, again, had their, I'm not going to say they were terrible. Obviously, weren't terrible, but teams could take advantage if they were able to. But the offense, again, the way it's clicking, you're putting more pressure on the other offense to do that. So, USC in the top 5 in offense and defense on both sides of the ball. So they are, again, just an absolute nightmare. And so last week, again, for the Trojans, they beat Washington State, but Travis Dye, I want to focus on that. Like I said, the passing yards a game, the rushing yards a game, they're in the top 5 in the conference. But you look at what Travis Dye did last week against Washington State. 28 touches for 149 yards, averaging 5.3 a carry, and he did have the one USC rushing touchdown. But they ran the ball 40 times. Caleb Williams added another 9 carries for 34 yards, averaging 3.8 a carry. But again, after passing for 188 yards, he rushes for 34 yards. He threw the 2 touchdowns. Travis Dye, though, again, a clock chewer, chewing up the clock, 28 carries. And you got to think a lot of that coming in the second half, but just, again, getting 5.3 a carry, chewing up the clock, and that's where making sure that once they got the lead, they're not giving it back to Washington State's offense last week. So Travis Dye, again, this young man, and like I said, he did have 2 rushing touchdowns 2 weeks ago against Arizona State, but it ran for 62 yards. They're trying to get him the ball, and actually ASU, who, again, has been picked on for their rush defense. And yes, Caleb Williams was throwing the ball a lot, but you can look at that and say, okay, they did something. There's something on tape to show what was working for ASU. Yes, Travis Dye, like I said, the 2 rushing touchdowns then. But 28 carries for 149 yards, 40 rushes overall to just 29 passes. So USC controlling the clock. And like I said, last week they had 5 sacks, did the Trojans, 9 tackles for losses, 3 QB hurries as well. So defensively, and again, neither team, they didn't have an interception last week, but man, if you're cleaning up on the sacks, again, 24 through the 6 games. So like I said, averaging 4 sacks a game and changing field position, maybe causing turnovers as well. So again, what Lincoln Riley has done with this defense, where they are offensively and defensively in the conference, it is going to be, again, this game's going to be phenomenal. Should have said that off the top. This game's going to be phenomenal anyway. Rice-Eccles Stadium, like I said, they're going to be loud. They're going to be crazy. The Utes fans, again, coming off that tough loss against UCLA. Again, still everything in front of them. They can still play for a Pac-12 championship against the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 this year. So it's not going to be, like I said, just the winner from the North and versus the winner from the South. I said my piece on that. I think it should be that way, because why do you have divisions if you're not going to do it that way? And it's not like a winner from either side is going to have like 5 losses. It's physically impossible in this day and age. So anyway, but for Utah this week against USC, Cam Rising, I talk about what Caleb Williams has been to the offense for USC. Cam Rising is that for Utah. When we look at Utah's offensive ranks, they are 5th in total yards. And this is insane to me. 5th with 457.8 yards a game. They're 5th in the conference with that. Passing wise, as a team, they are 8th, actually. 256.3 yards a game passing are the Utes, but rushing, though, they are 3rd. 201.5 yards a game on the ground. They will beat you up on the ground. They want to be physical. They want to wear you down. And that's a good 18 yards above what USC is rushing for per game. So want to chew up the clock. Flip the ball, defensive side. Like I said, Utah 2nd in conference, only giving up 19 points a game. Like I said, an eyelash behind USC's 18.7. Yards allowed, Utah number 1, 315.8 yards a game in conference. But in sacks, though, Utah is 7th. Again, 11 sacks. So, but they're hurrying. They are getting their hurries of the quarterback. They're making plays, but 7th in sacks with 11 on the season. Like I said, to USC's 24, which is just, again, they that D-line, they're going to get after you. But for Utah, and what Cam Rising has done this season too, real quick, because passing-wise, Caleb Williams, by the way, is 4th in the Pac-12. Should have said that. Individually, 1,590 passing yards coming in. Rushing, Travis Dye 2nd in conference at 571 total yards. He's behind the man, Zach Charbonnet. And then in receiving, Jordan Addison is 4th for the Trojans, 479 yards a game. But passing-wise, like I said, Caleb Williams is 4th for USC, and Cam Rising is 7th. He has 1,440 total yards. He's thrown 13 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. And Caleb Williams has only thrown 1 interception. So, again, he is not turning the ball over. 14 touchdowns to just 1 pick. I had that in my notes too, but wanted to get to Cam Rising. But, yeah, Cam Rising, 13 touchdowns and the 3 interceptions. He's been sacked 5 times. Williams has been sacked 11 times. So Cam Rising and getting rid of the ball. Both of them can use their feet, move around, so that definitely saves a lot of sacks. And then, but yeah, I mean, as a team, it's just when you look at it. But for Utah, again, last week when they lost to UCLA 42-32, again in Pasadena. But looking at the box score for them, defensively, they had 2 sacks, 6 tackles for losses, and only 1 quarterback hurry. But you look at what Zach Charbonnet did, 22 touches, 198 yards. He was averaging 9 yards a carry on this Utah defense, which, again, is a little bit unheard of for me, because Utah's defense gouging that. And again, I know the first game of the season, you fans, you can go back to, oh, well, hey, they gave up 283 yards rushing to Florida. Well, Florida also gave up 233 rushing yards. So, yes, they were minus 50 in that. And, yes, giving up 283, obviously very shocking, and it'll lose you a lot of games. But the fact they were in it at the end, interception in the end zone. But focusing on this game, look, for them to get to for them to, they're going to have to, again, key on Travis Dye. And yes, I know it sounds very obvious, but you're going to have to key on Travis Dye. And to me, it's one of those things that's going to be easier said than done, because that offensive line for USC, we've seen what they've done. Yes, they're protecting Caleb Williams. Like I said, he has been sacked 11 times in 6 games. And yeah, some of those he's on the run, maybe trying to make something happen, gets dropped behind the line for the sack. And so, but if you're the Utah defense, you need to, like I said, key in on that. And this is a Utah team that beat USC last year. That's what I was looking for in the notes here. 42-26. So the Utes had their way with them in Southern Cal. Yes, it was a different USC team, but yeah, they scored in every quarter and won 42-26 comfortably last year. So the Trojans looking to get some revenge on the Utes. But yeah, I mean, you need to focus on Travis Dye and not let him go, like I said, just absolutely crazy. And then for USC, you're looking at Cam Rising again, accurate with the football last week against UCLA. No touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but 22 for 32. So can you bait him into the interceptions? But if they're running the ball, like I said, Tavion Thomas had 18 carries for 91 yards, Rising. And yes, some of those are scrambles, but some of those are called plays. 13 carries for 59 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. So it's a Utah team that, with him at the helm, it makes an interesting chess match. And like I said, those fans at Rice Eccles are going to be ornery. That is again a 5 p.m. well, at 8 o'clock Eastern, but a 5 p.m. kickoff here on the left coast on Fox. So you'll be able to see people back east will actually be able to pay attention to 2 very, very good West Coast teams. And yeah, for USC, when you look at it, again, it's what are you doing with, like I said, Cam Rising? Can you get the pressure on? Can you get those sacks? I mean, like I said, 4 sacks a game. Are you going to get to Cam Rising? Tavion Thomas, receiver-wise, Devon Velley has been just a huge, huge part of the offense for head coach Kyle Whittingham in Utah. I mean, just last week he had 6 catches for 87 yards. Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 67. Like I said, they threw it 23 times. They ran it, though, 43 times. So the physicality, can USC's defense, and again, you're not getting the quarterbacks, you're not getting sacks if they're running the ball. Are they going to be able to stop Tavion Thomas? And if so, with the Cam Rising as well. Again, don't want your quarterback to take a beating, but man, this is going to be such an insane game. Like I said, the offense, defense rankings, both these teams in the top 5 in conference in most of the categories. The points per game, to me, like I said, is the defensively. USC giving up 18.7, Utah giving up 19 flat. So it's a tough one to pick. You know what? It's a tough one to pick. But I'm going. I picked against Utah at home last time, and I said I'm not picking against Utah at home again this season. So I am going with the Utes in a 27-21 victory over the Trojans at Rice Eccles. And again, it'll be an insane atmosphere, so please do check it out. It's on Fox, 8 o'clock Eastern for you fans on the East Coast. It'll be a phenomenal matchup, and the atmosphere will be phenomenal. The matchup, again, leaning towards being phenomenal, but then, of course, it could go insane and we get a blowout. But with these two teams, I don't see it happening whatsoever at all. So 27-21, Utah at home gets the victory over USC. Our next matchup we're going to look at is Stanford going on the road to take on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. And man, for Stanford, that tough loss last week, I get it. You're up by 2 scores going into the fourth, and you leave with a loss. And it's, again, very, very tough. And I look at that, I mean, perfect rebounding, and you have a team in which you can in Notre Dame who last week, by the way, they battled fellow independent and 16th ranked BYU, and the Irish came away with the 28-20 victory. BYU made a little bit of a charge in the fourth, but it was the second quarter that inevitably did the Cougars in. But yeah, you look at Notre Dame, Drew Payne, their quarterback last week, 22 for 28, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. Audric Estime had 14 carries for 97 yards. Logan Diggs, 17 carries for 93 yards. Again, 45 rushing plays to just 28 pass plays. And Notre Dame, who is now 3-2 on the season, are the Fighting Irish. And so far this season, again, their schedule always a little bit different because being independent, and when you look at who they normally play, and again, yes, it is still better than most schools at a conference matchups, but since they're independent, all their games are at a conference. So they took on Ohio State at the beginning of the season. To recap, they lost to the Buckeyes 21-10. Then they had that upsetting loss at home to Marshall 26-21. They held on to beat Cal 24-17, and then they beat North Carolina 45-32. And so they lost their first 2, won their last 3, and they beat 16th ranked at the time BYU 28-20. They now take on Stanford, like I said, at home. But yeah, I mean, Ohio State, Marshall, you can say Marshall, but still an FBS team. And then they took on Cal, North Carolina, BYU, Stanford. Then they have UNLV, Syracuse is at 18, Clemson, who's at number 4. And yes, the Armed Forces battle. They take on Navy, then they take on Boston College, and finish up with, like I said, USC in Southern California. So, but yeah, for Notre Dame on the season, like I said, 3-2 after dropping their first 2. Could have dropped that first 3 again. Cal had that bobbled Hail Mary again. The ball ends up going down to a receiver that had went up and then came down, fell down, and he bobbled the ball but couldn't hold on to it. And Notre Dame comes out with that win, and they've won 3 in a row now. So they've settled in. And when you look at it, they I want to say got to be favorites in this game, because if you look at it, let's see, what is the line for this? So Notre Dame is, wow, they're a 16.5 point favorite. They're minus 16.5, but the over-under is at 54.5. Wow. Well, again, Stanford struggles, I guess, kind of would make it, but wow, 16.5, and the over-under is 4.5. So, but for Stanford, like I said last week, I mean, they fell to Oregon State 28-27. But when you look at, Tanner McKee and what he did last week for the Cardinal, he was, again, I love this kid, but 20 for 33, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have the interception. So 34 pass plays, and they got down, but they had 27 run plays. Casey Filkins, 21 carries for 62 yards. And, they were trying to get him going, but 3 yards a carry. And Oregon State, as the game went on, just kind of able to shut him down there. And they get the win. But for Stanford, again, going on the road to South Bend, again, just such a great rivalry. If you can check it out on NBC, please do. It's again, you'll see the pageantry and everything within this game. But yeah, Stanford again, and you look at their, rankings on the season. I mean, offensively, not in the top 5 in anything. When you look at total yards, the Cardinal are 8th with 400 yards, 400.2 yards a game. And then when we look at passing yards a game, Tanner McKee, I mean, as a team, the Cardinal are 7th. 7th, yeah, 261.6 yards a game. And then for rushing, you always expect the Stanford to be a little bit higher, and they are actually 8th. Yeah, 8th at 136 yards a game rushing. And defensively, again, not in the top 5 in anything. And when you look at yards allowed, this has been kind of eye-opening for the Cardinal. They are 11th, second to last in the Pac-12, 431.6 yards a game. They've lost their last 9 games at home after this Oregon State loss. So yeah, to me, it's going to be tough sledding for Stanford. I say Notre Dame gets this victory at like 28 to. Actually, I'm going to say 31 to 14. The Golden Domers get the victory over Stanford in that game. So that's that. Arizona and Washington, real quick. This game, oh my goodness, wow. So when we look at this game and the spread keeps jumping, the spread totally keeps jumping on this game, which it started at. Well, now it's back down to 14. It started at 13.5, 14. I heard it was up to 15.5 Wednesday, and now it's back down to 14. But the over/under has jumped a lot. It is up to 73 with these two teams. So, yeah, that's because you look at what happened last week. Obviously, Washington gave up 45 to Arizona State. 45-38 was the final there. Real quick, Michael Penix Jr., this young man, 33 had to throw 53 passes, didn't throw any touchdowns, did throw 1 interception. The team did have 5 rushing touchdowns. Cam Davis for Washington had 3. Wayne Talapapa had 1. And the other one, Michael Penix Jr., also rushed for 1-yard touchdown run. But it's, again, a Washington offense, when we look at what this team can do, because the Arizona offense, they can definitely do a lot. The Washington offense total yards, they are third at 498.5. They went under 500 yards, 498.5 yards a game. They're passing Michael Penix Jr. 357.3 yards a game, number one in the Pac-12. Rushing, though, for the Huskies, again, a team that is spraying the ball all over the field, they are seventh, rushing for 141 yards a game, but 15 rushing touchdowns on the season for the Huskies, but seventh in rushing. Defensively, for Washington, they are in the third in yards allowed a game at 350.7. And then they are also third in sacks at 16. Again, 8 of those coming in one game. But still 16 sacks on the season. So, and you look through, through these conference games, and yeah, the Huskies defense is right there. Arizona's defense, on the other hand, again, they are yards a game. The Wildcats are 10th, giving up 430 yards a game. And passing wise for Arizona, they are actually third. Is that right? Passing defense? Yeah. No, total yards allowed. Sorry. There's points allowed, total yards allowed, and sacks. Offensively, though, Arizona is number 2 in passing yards a game. Jayden de Laura, 323.5 yards a game. This is going to be a big matchup. They go up to Washington. Again, Washington has been great at home. But yeah, 16 or 14-point favorites are the Huskies. With this, you know what? Again, it's not because it's Arizona. They've played really well. I think Jayden de Laura, and we've seen, again, what he can do. I mean, 6 touchdowns against Colorado. Oregon ran the ball against them, and Jayden de Laura last week against Oregon, as, yeah, they did lose 49-22, but Jayden de Laura did have, I mean, he was 24 for 42, 241 yards, 1 touchdown, but the 1 interception as well. So, again, this young man, stats, he is balling out. I love what Jayden de Laura is doing. And, again, I think he'll be able to throw it around on this Husky defense, but I think the Husky defense will also throw it around on Arizona. So, for this one, I am going with Washington, but in a shootout. Check this one out. 49-45 over the Wildcats. So I think the Wildcats cover the spread, and I'm terrible with those. So again, if you're doing it for like your coffee money, like that people buy coffee with, do that. But I think U of A definitely covers, but 49-45, the Huskies over the Wildcats up in Seattle. And our last game we're looking at, Cal and Colorado. Look, man, it has been struggles for Cal. Like I said, I mean, it's just obviously they let go of their coach, and he is gone. They're 0 on the season when we look at it, and it's tough. They had a bye last week, which is definitely good for them. But yeah, it's one of those things when Cal, I think, again, Justin Wilcox has them rolling, and I say Cal. Oh, the let's see, the spread to this game. Wow, Cal is 15-point favorites, but they're saying there's not going to be a ton of points. Well, they're all going to be scored by Cal. The over-under is 48, so Cal's minus 15 on the road in Boulder. So, yeah, I go with Cal to cover. I think Cal wins this game. I mean, Colorado, again, they're going to need to show it. And they're again, guys are competing, they're fighting hard, but man, I'm a big fan of, of Cal's quarterback, they're actually coming off a bye last week, but their last time on the field, they lost to Washington State 28-9. But Jack Plummer, their quarterback again. So I take Cal over Colorado. I literally think it's I'm going to go 37-7. Cal wins that game. So again, Cal over. So yeah, I got Cal over Colorado 37-7. I have Washington 49-45 over Arizona. Notre Dame. I said 27-13 over Stanford, or 27-14 over Stanford. Utah 27-21 over SC, number 7 versus number 20 in Utah. And then Washington State going on the road, beating Oregon State 27-21. Those are my picks. Again, want to thank everybody at Sideline Sports. My guy JB Ellis, obviously Eric Wilson, my brother, helped me this out. You can check us out on the Sports Arena Monday and Wednesdays, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Shameless plug here on Pac-12 Preview. But yeah, I want to thank everybody at Sideline Sports. Again, enjoy your weekend of college football. Oh, bye weeks in the Pac-12. Obviously, I didn't talk about Arizona State has a bye. Arizona State has a bye. UCLA has a bye, and Oregon has a bye. Those are the 3 teams off in the Pac-12. ASU, UCLA, and Oregon are off. But again, thank everybody at Sideline Sports. Again, check me back out. I'll be back here Monday, 10 a.m. and scheduled, hopefully everybody's travel works out well, scheduled to have some guests to break down some of these matchups and what happened in them. So everybody have a great college football weekend. I will see you then. Enjoy your football. As always, forks up, go Pac-12. And I'll see you on Monday here on the Sideline Sports Network.